Hi, I'm Lori.
And I'm Kevin, and this is No Longer Ashamed.
We are survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
And we're here to share with you that if you're a survivor, you don't have to be alone.
Our logo is a salamander, and the reason is a fire salamander can survive a fire, and you have survived a fire.
We want to help you with your journey to healing and hope.
We are all survivors together, and we walk this journey together, and you are not alone.
By telling our stories, we are hoping that you will have the courage to share your story as well and find your voice.
Because stories are so important, and for so long I know that I wouldn't tell my story, but when I finally shared my story, that's when I got my freedom.
And this is our journey and your journey to healing and hope. So come with us.
And our guest today is Jamie. What I love about Jamie's story is often things happen as kids that could be construed as sexual abuse, but they're not exactly the way we would think of it. And so when I was hearing her story, I realized how important it was for her to be able to share it. So I'm just going to hand you the mic, Jamie.
I'm Jamie, and I just celebrated 2 years clean from pain pills. Today is my 2-year anniversary from cigarettes.
Congratulations.
From cigarettes. Woohoo!
Oh, wow. That's a big one, too.
2 years from pain pills, 2 years from cigarettes. I quit taking pain pills. I went to Whidbey Island for the weekend, and it just happened. It wasn't something that I planned. I was just sick of myself, and I was sick of my life, and I was sick of a whole lot of stuff.
And she doesn't know people on Whidbey. Like Kevin has a B&B on Whidbey, but Jamie didn't know anyone. She just took the ferry.
Oh.
So through 2 years of not doing that, I knew that I had to do the work of figuring out what the original problem was or what the deeper roots were. And I discovered that there was trauma and some things that went on in my childhood that weren't okay with my moral compass. And that set me up for a chain reaction of things that I would continue to not be okay with, but that I would continue to engage with because I had no boundaries. Therefore, I didn't expect anyone else to have boundaries. And through digging into my drug addiction, I discovered that the root of all of my problems was sex. It wasn't the drugs. It wasn't the alcohol. It was sex. Sex was what I used to blanket the hurt and the pain, and it made me feel good, and it was free, and I wasn't hurting anybody, and, why not? So once I had a clear picture that this is a problem, and it was never porn. It was, I didn't go to the bar and pick up random people. It was always someone that I felt safe with. So it was interesting to me to realize that this was an addiction, but it wasn't your textbook, I sit around in my mom's basement and watch porn for days on end.
And that often we hear of this with men, but not so often with women. So there's not the kind of help available.
Right. And what we do hear about women, it's socially acceptable. It's socially encouraged for women to, go to the bar and have a couple of drinks and pick her up a man and take him home for the night. And, that's okay. That's what we do as women, right? No, it's not okay. In realizing that sex was my drug of choice, I learned that I was set up. I don't want to say set up for failure because I always knew it was wrong. I don't know. It is what it is. You've got a nice body. You should wear tighter clothes. If you've got a body that looks like that, you should flaunt it. If you've got it, flaunt it.
But this was when you were young. It was before you were
yeah.
an adult.
Yeah, junior high.
Mm-hmm.
Young. You're wearing sweatpants today. Don't you have some tighter jeans you could put on? I mean, and things like that were, so growing up hearing those kind of things, it tied my identity to sex, to a sexual aspect of life.
Where did those messages come from mainly? Was it your parents, your siblings? I mean, where did you get those messages from primarily?
It was a family member.
Uh-huh.
It was never corrected. It was never redirected from anyone that was around or heard. It was accepted, and it was okay.
It was just considered.
And then
normal.
They did a little trading for your bikini services, right?
Yeah. There was a conversation that to this day I don't know that they're aware that I was a witness to. It was a barter that if you'll let Jamie come clean my house in a bikini, I'll give her money and I'll give you drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was 18. Come on, 18, 19.
It's so impressive to me is, okay, number one, you had to face the drug addiction. And you had had some emotional problems probably because of that. And then when you face that, it's like one more thing, then cigarettes, and then different kind of things that maybe even people in your life that you had to get away from because they were not healthy. Some people, they're a drug addict, they get off drugs and they work their recovery and voila. But it's like you, every step, then there's another wrench thrown in it that you have to deal with and face.
Yeah, and there was a lot of it because through this, my marriage was, oh man, my marriage was less than healthy, less than happy, for a number of reasons, and it took me a lot of therapy and a lot of support groups to realize that I was also part of the problem. So anything I have to say about my marriage, I don't place all the blame on him. We were both broken. We both came from a dysfunctional childhood. He had misconceptions about sex. I had misconceptions about sex. But there was infidelity in my marriage. That was another way that I chose to escape what was going on. And again, that infidelity in my marriage was never that I went to the bar and had a couple of drinks and brought somebody home for the night. It was someone that I had known my entire life, someone that made me feel safe, someone that made me feel secure, someone that in the moment made me feel loved. And that's not what I was getting. And I was so empty that I was just desperate for it. And in hindsight, I was nothing more than a pawn in his sexual addiction. The ripple effect is, and it's socially acceptable. So no one wants to admit that it's a problem, that it's unhealthy.
Yeah, I think our media does tend to distort sexuality in a way that teaches us lessons that really don't help people when they've been either abused or molested. We tend to sexualize young women, and men who are dominating tend to be looked at the role model. And so we tend to do this, the media and everything tends to lean towards this message of women are the sexual objects and men are the conquerors. And so we're teaching our kids lessons that don't help them.
Well, and I think for Jamie raising 4 boys, I think there was a time where you just kind of went, wait a minute. Because as the only woman in the family, it was kind of easy, don't you think, to just go, oh, well, that's a macho thing. But then all of a sudden you start to realize, wait a minute, this isn't how women should be treated. And I don't want my boys to see this.
Yeah. And at the moment that pivoted in a different direction, I still have moments of guilt and shame that I have to work through regarding that, because you would think that my own children that I grew would have been enough for me to do something different. But because of the opinions and the ideals that I held of what a man was and what a husband was supposed to be, it was okay. But it wasn't until I took on a foster daughter, having her, and that realization that I was teaching her what marriage looked like, what healthy relationships look like. At some point, of course, not in her infancy, but at some point, she would be learning what sexual relations look like, what intimate relationships look like. And is this really the message that I want to send her? And it was through her that I started to really examine what my marriage was, what my moral compass was as far as intimate relationships. And she was the turning point for everything that I have undone. All of my recovery started with her.
I love it. She said yes. She said yes to a baby that needed a place to go. And she texted me and she said, am I crazy? And I said, hey, if God's put it on your heart, I'll be the last one to say no. But isn't it amazing how God works? And I think about how recovery from drugs and alcohol is pretty laid out, the 12 steps. But what does recovery from sex addiction look like when it's acceptable? Like drugs and alcohol, it's like, okay, well, my family's going to be pissed if they find out I'm using. So what does recovery look like for you?
It looks like walking a fine line in Celebrate Recovery, because that's not a common conversation. It looks like walking a fine line when you're in a support group, because that's not a common conversation. It looks like a whole lot of personal, intimate, one-on-one time with God, because he understands, he gets it. He knew what I was going to go through. But to be able to sit down and have that conversation with Joe Blow, or let's say Jane Blow, because I'm not going to be talking to John about it, to have those conversations, it's a difficult conversation to have just in general, but then to be able to seek out support, it's non-existent, because even if someone is aware that they have a problem, it's so taboo, no one wants to talk about it.
What do you think makes it hard for someone to talk about?
Well, because women don't have sexual addiction.
Mm-hmm.
That's a man thing. It's the men that are sitting in their mom's basement watching porn all day. I mean, how many women do we see on social media or whatever platform that, oh, I watch porn with my husband. It's okay. Really? Is it okay? Would you be okay if he were to actually go through with that act with a physical body?
Yeah.
There is no difference.
I sent Jamie a podcast. I can't remember which one it was, but the woman, she's a sex addict and she's in a support group. And she said the problem is that people assume that people with a sex addiction are perverts and they'll go after children.
Yeah.
And she said, that's not who we are. It's really no different than alcohol or whatever, but they will assume that. So if you say it, then you're kind of instantly categorized. And so many people are so naive, that's the first place they'll go.
So the stigma is that you're perverted and you can't be trusted, that there's something wrong with you, and
don't let her around my husband because she's going to steal my husband, or I don't want my boyfriend talking to you because you might hook up with him. And it's so not that, because again, I would like to say that the infidelities in my marriage, it was with people that I have known my entire life.
Like you said, recovery looks like a lot of praying, a lot of time with God. The fact that you spoke out, I mean, the fact that you shared this with me months and months ago, I felt really honored that you trusted me like that. I realized that because of, it's not a client, it's somebody that's reached out to me and has been telling me about how she's chatting with men and her husband has to change the password all the time. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is a thing. It's not just, well, stop it. When it's an addiction, then you've got to find triggers and you've got to find how to get yourself on track. And there's just not a lot of support, I don't think, for women.
Absolutely not. Drugs create a chemical reaction in the brain. Mm-hmm. Sex, love, and intimacy creates a chemical reaction in the brain, and they're identical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're the same. So they're the same.
Yeah, but you're not altered. Like with drugs, then you're altered. But with a sex addiction, you're still who you are. You're still going to work every day, doing what you do. Yeah, and I'm so grateful that you spoke up, and in the fact that Celebrate Recovery, that it is a place where you can talk. It's like Kevin and I often say, if you have to tell someone, if you know that you've been abused, you got to kind of choose who you're going to tell, because the reaction you get could throw you underground. You want to be able to talk about it because we think that's so important, but then also being a little careful.
Sure. It almost feels the same having that conversation as it does talking about being in an abusive marriage, because there are some people that will believe you and some people that don't. And that's such a fine line to walk when you are coming out with your own transgressions and things that you're trying to heal from. Someone that doesn't believe you or someone that gives you grief about it, that can be a turning point for destruction.
When you've been talking about it, what has been the general reaction? I don't know how many people you've shared this with, but have people been helpful?
This is the first time that I have really stepped out boldly with this conversation. I have discussed it in depth many, many, many times with my sponsor, because she speaks my language. She loves me tough. She's never judged me. She's never had a harsh word, but she loves me tough. She's like, hey, you need to really think about what you're saying right now. Or is that how God views you? She loved me tough through every bit of this. And then Lori was my next person. Because she also loves me tough. She doesn't judge. She always has kind, positive feedback, and I trust her. So I had that conversation with her.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, somebody needs to hear this. Somebody needs to
Mhm.
know that they're not alone. Somebody needs to know that it's okay for you to speak up and admit that you have a problem, or admit that you need help, or admit that, hey, I may not really understand what's going on here, but it doesn't feel right. We don't have to suffer alone. Mental health, drug addiction, sex addiction, we don't have to suffer alone.
So how has this process been going as far as how are you maintaining, you know you have the problem, but now how are you addressing the problem and trying to get past the problem?
The problem was being honest about it. That for me was the issue. My life has been so rooted in acceptance and performance that it took me getting really, really honest with myself to be able to admit that was a lot of the problem. Is I exhibited sexual seeking behaviors because I was desperate for acceptance. I was putting on that performance because I was desperate for acceptance. And that was really hard for me to admit that I'm not perfect, to admit that I do things that make absolutely no sense because I want people to like me. Because to be honest, I used to walk around with a chip on my shoulder. I don't need anybody. I don't care if you like me. I got this.
It was really hard when you said that, seeking acceptance, because I did see you as the tough chick, right?
And the truth is, I'm goo inside. I have a heart. I'm very compassionate. My boundaries suck. They used to. I'm good now. I can be honest with myself, and I can admit that I did things that I shouldn't have done, and I said things to people that I shouldn't have said, and I put myself in compromising positions because I was seeking acceptance. I'm 2 years single, and I love it. I love it. I do what I want when I want. I don't want a man. I don't want to say that I don't need a man because, at some point in my life, it would be nice to have that companionship. But right now, I'm so completely content being by myself. I never dreamed that it was possible for me to be okay being alone.
Do you think part of it's because you're falling in love with Jamie?
It's because God is teaching me how to be okay with who I am. And that's still a process. We're still learning. There's still things that creep up, and I still have my times that I have to process, and I still reach out to my sponsor occasionally and say, hey, I need you to help me work through this, but I'm able to say I need help.
I think that's the biggest thing. And I know that we both know drug and alcoholics that have had 20, 30 years sober, and they still got to call their sponsors once in a while. And that the struggle that's called life, but the willingness to speak the words. To me, that is everything. And Kevin and I laugh about this because his wife was the first one I ever told about my childhood sexual abuse. And I told her, and then I went home, and it was before cell phones, and I must have called her 10, 15 times that day. You're not going to tell anyone, right? You're not accidentally going to tell anyone. I mean, I just kept calling her, and she probably was like, oh, what is wrong with her? But I'd never said it before. And then all of a sudden I felt so freaking vulnerable. But she walked that process with me, and it's made me so aware of what it's like when you first speak the words. Yeah. When you first tell your story, it's scary and it's relief. There's so many words you can put to it.
Yeah, relief is a good one. I have had 2 legitimate nervous breakdowns in my life. One of them landed me 16 days inpatient in a mental hospital against my will. I really, really didn't want to be there. But it was the greatest thing that I ever did, was to allow myself that 16 days to rest, to relax, to not, as crazy as that sounds, relaxing in a mental hospital, but it was kind of a reset button. And when I came out with a determination that my life was going to be different. I thought because I wasn't doing drugs anymore that everything was okay. No, it wasn't okay. So I came out with a determination that my life was going to be different, that I was not going to get back to that place ever again in my life. And there are still things that will happen that I have to remind myself of, laying in that hospital bed at UW, tied down by all 4 limbs. I'm not going to go back there, so you better pull out your toolbox. And I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to get honest and to come out with those things, because keeping all those secrets, keeping all that grossness inside made me sick. It made me physically sick. It made me spiritually sick. It made me mentally sick. And it wasn't until I started coming out with all of that stuff that my body is well, my soul is well, my heart and my brain are well, and I function as God designed me to function.
So Kevin and I talk a lot about forgiveness. Has it been hard to forgive yourself?
It really hasn't. It really hasn't. Has it been work? Absolutely. Has it been hard work? Absolutely. Have I been hesitant about it? No. Do I have to remind myself sometimes, hey, God has forgiven you for this, so you need to forgive yourself? Yeah. Sometimes things creep in. But once I got to a point that I really understood what God was, because growing up, God was not a good God. He ruled with an iron fist, and he was angry, and if you sneeze, you're going to hell. And it took me a long time to reestablish that loving relationship with him. And once I got there and I really understood that he was a forgiving, loving God, it made it much, much easier for me to forgive myself. My problem is that I was so focused on forgiving other people that I didn't focus on forgiving myself. It wasn't hard. It was just getting to a point to where I did it.
What would you say to someone who's listening who is going, oh my gosh, I can so relate to that? What's their next step if they've never told anyone?
Tell someone. There's freedom in letting it out. And if it's uncomfortable, or if it's not a positive feeling that first time, write it down. Write it down and get it out. Write it down, read it to yourself just to hear those words, and then tell someone. And then if you need to tell someone else, it's okay to ask for help, whether that be a counselor, a friend, a pastor, someone that you know is not going to judge you. It's okay to ask for help. And if you don't have that someone, I can be that someone. Reach out to Lori, reach out to Kevin. They can connect you with me. I'll listen.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So now you've told basically 3 people. You've told or your sponsor, and you've told me, and now you've told Kevin. So tell me what you're feeling right now.
I mean, it's fine. I've done so much work regarding this that I don't carry shame and guilt about it today. Now, I may panic in a little while thinking, oh, I wonder who's going to hear this, but it doesn't matter. Somebody needs to hear this. So for every naysayer, there's someone that's going to hear it, that it's going to give them a little bit of courage, or it may even completely change their life. And I am grateful that God has given me the gift of an open mouth. I have not stopped talking my entire life. And I'm not going to start now. So I'm grateful to have this opportunity to put words to what I have been through, and hopefully somebody else will benefit from it.
Now, when you went to recovery, I understand it was because of the drugs and alcohol. What led you to realize that you had the issues with the sex addiction? What was the kind of turning point in realizing that that was the issue?
I had been single for a year, and the landmark is a year, right? When you're in recovery, you don't date for a year, and you don't date a newcomer. And so I'm like, oh, it's been a year. I'm good. I've stayed single. I haven't had sex with anybody. I'm great. Let's do this. So I started poking around. I found a guy that I thought I could trust. So herein lies the problem, right? And there was a connection, and he's good looking, and I'm single and he's single, and hey, let's do this. We had a conversation about sexual health, and test results were shared because I had just had mine done, because I'm coming up on a year and I'm going to be responsible, right? And I'm going to actually do this right this time, right? Yeah. So we had that conversation, and we used a condom, and I spent the last year thinking that he had given me a sexually transmitted virus that I wasn't ever going to get rid of. So I really had to settle into that, because it was my decision that put me in that place.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't blame another soul on this planet. I did it willingly. And then we added that whole other level of hell to it, in the fact that I thought I was doing the right thing. For once, I was taking care of myself. I was honoring myself. And look at where it got me, right? I was so grossed out by what happened that I called my sponsor, and I'm like, I think I've got a problem. okay, we processed through that, and that's where I got with it. It wasn't her implications. She didn't coach me. It was like God laid every bit of this in front of me, and he's like, hey, it's time to do something about it. So I let the words come out of my mouth. I have an addiction to sex. That is my drug of choice. And so that's what it was. And I've spent the last year really digging into that and dissecting my behaviors and why I do the things I do. And that's the root. I've been rooted in a desperate need for acceptance.
Is that because you think when you're growing up, you weren't getting noticed or accepted or the attention you needed?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think of a response to that I don't have to necessarily nail anybody to the wall. I was adopted into the family, and although there were claims my entire life that I was not loved any differently, I always felt like I was treated differently. My mom's side of the family was strained at best. Where I still don't have much of a relationship with that side of the family by choice. I don't feel like I was accepted, and my grades were good, but they could be better. My dress was okay, but you should change your shoes. Or why are you wearing your hair like that? Or wow, you've got too much makeup on. And that might be why I do what I do now. I don't wear makeup. I don't fix my hair. I don't bother with dressing up. What's the point? Somebody's going to look at you and think, oh, what's she doing? I sought attention in places that I shouldn't have because it was easy.
Yeah.
It was easy.
But it doesn't fill the need generally. It just temporarily.
Well, sure. It's like going out and getting high. You get that fixed for a minute and you feel good for a minute. And then tomorrow you wake up with a hangover and think, oh, I got to go get high.
I've known Jamie for a long time, and I didn't know she had a drug issue. She was helping work with women and help them through their addiction. I had no idea. You've always been able to pull it all off. You've always worked. You've always been an absolute overachiever. And like you said, I had no boundaries. The one thing Jamie can tell you, I've always said to her is, got to have boundaries, got to say no, got to say no. But it's not like you think, oh, I was useless and I had all these problems and now I'm free. It's like you were a very active, contributing part of society in the midst of all of this. That's what's always amazed and impressed me, that you could have easily not acknowledged anything because you were kind of in that realm of being a leader, and yet you were so willing to admit the things you struggled with. And I have so much respect for you. You know that you were able to say the words.
Thank you. I think that was one of the bigger things. I feel like I carried more shame and guilt about that than I did a lot of other things. And maybe I'll dig into why, because it's interesting. But the fact that I was helping women with drugs and alcohol, the fact that I was helping women with domestic violence and CPS issues, and I had all these secrets going on behind closed doors. I carried a lot of guilt and a lot of shame about that. And I had to be really, really honest about that and say I had no business helping those people. I couldn't even help myself. But it was through those women that I thought I was helping. They were actually helping me. They created a foundation for me to acknowledge the things going on in my life. It wasn't okay. It wasn't okay. And then I got little Missy, and that just kind of put the frosting on the cupcake.
That's the foster child you have?
And you wouldn't have gotten her had you not been working with those women.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I asked you, what happens if you don't start telling your story? And I think it was you that said you just get sick.
You get sick and you stay sick. I mean, what does the drug addict do? They hide. They wallow in guilt. They wallow in shame. They wallow in pity. They use.
They blame.
They feel guilty. It's everybody else's fault. It's everybody else's problem. Well, I'm using because you treated me like garbage, or I used sex as an outlet because I was so devastated in my marriage that I didn't know what else to do. Well, that wasn't his fault. That was mine. That was a choice I made. I could have done something different. And it through a whole lot of work. And once I stopped blaming him for everything, I realized just how much garbage I brought into the relationship. I grew up in a dysfunctional family, but I was so busy pointing the finger at him so that I didn't have to point it at myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we do that. I've probably said this to you. When I look at my first marriage, sometimes people want to say, well, maybe you didn't pray enough, or maybe you made a mistake. But number one, I have amazing children. And number two, I don't think I could have worked through my sexual abuse issues with a man that was pawing at me all the time. I was with a gay man who was my girlfriend. And I often think it's like we have these hopes and dreams that marriage is forever, but that marriage served me well for me to be able to start to get to where I was. And then when I did, I was able to stand up to him and say, I know what's going on and we can't play pretend anymore. But until I could get myself taken care of, I couldn't have been able to reflect that lovingly back to him. So what you would say to somebody to find someone to talk to write it down. Do you know of any books? Have you ever found any books?
The Bible.
Yeah. The best book.
What's your favorite book in the Bible?
My favorite scripture is Hebrews 13:6.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know verbatim, but the gist of it is that God is my helper. God is my right hand. What can man do to me? And I carry that with a lot of things when that guilt comes creeping in, when that shame comes creeping in, when I think, when I'm doing hair and somebody walks in the door and they look at me and I'm like, what does she know? Who cares?
Right.
Or he sits down and he's like, so how are you doing today? And I'm like, what's he thinking? Who cares? But Ephesians is my favorite book. That's my favorite scripture, but Ephesians is my favorite book. I've actually got it tattooed on my arm, the armor of God, because it's just crucial that we remember we are not fighting flesh and blood. And that puts it all into perspective. We are not fighting flesh and blood. The enemy will find a loophole. And when he does, he's going to exploit it. Whether it's you, your brother, your sister, the guy down the road, it's not about us. This is a battle between God and the enemy, and we're just collateral damage.
Thing I love about people in recovery is they understand that daily connection. They understand how every day we have to look to God. And as a coach, I coach a lot of people that aren't struggling with those kind of things. And I say, can you give God or yourself 5 minutes of just quiet a day? And they're like, no, I don't have time. It's like, you don't have time not to. And that's what I love about the recovery world is there's just such humility of this is all about God. He has to be first. And I love that. And I love that about you, Jamie. And I know you weren't there when I met you.
No, I was adamant. Can I pray for you? Nope, I'm good.
She
You
came
want to
into
sit down and read the Bible? Nope, I'm good.
Right. She came into a Christian organization with a mohawk. I fell in love with her instantly. And she said, I just got to do hair.
Yep. That's all I wanted to do. I'm just here to do hair. I was in cosmetology school looking for some practice.
Pretty amazing how God kind of was guiding you towards something that would change your life.
Yeah. And I'm just so glad he crossed our paths because we have walked through some war zones together. So grateful for your honesty and that you would trust me with your story. It means so much.
For letting me share it. Thank you for letting me be honest. Thank you for making me feel safe to be honest.
I'm glad you feel safe. I wanted to ask you, since I'm the third person you've officially shared with, what are some of the tools you use now that help you to get to this place where you are now, as far as you're able to share? You've actually shared with people, someone you don't even know.
A whole lot of work with God. Journaling, it really boils down to the fact that I'm okay with myself. I'm okay with me. And once I'm okay with me, then it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. Therefore, why keep it a secret? Why not put it out there so that someone else can benefit from it?
Yeah. You know where you stand with God. You know how God loves you and cares for you. It doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks of you.
Right. And Jamie has an amazing gift of writing, and she will post things on Facebook that just blow me away. And so that's the next kick in the butt is for her to start putting that writing down. But, she told her story, and that's a big plus. So I'm going to give her a little bit of leeway.
Let me catch my breath, Lori.
Well, I'm honored that you did share with me, and I know what it's like at the beginning, and I'm glad you have a relationship with God that's been helping you through this. It took me a while to get there when I was first recovering from being abused, I was searching for God, but I didn't have a relationship. And so that's a big one. That's a really big step.
Yeah, it's interesting how, like, you kind of came to God in the middle of it. Kevin came to God after. I was raised a Christian while all this crap was going on. So it's just interesting how God meets us right where we are.
I felt like God was persistent in my life, but I just wasn't looking in the right places. I was fighting against him. I mean, there were so many things that I struggled with and that kind of got in the way.
Were you raised Pentecostal too?
No. I didn't really go to church much when I was growing up. My older brothers did, but by the time I was younger, my dad left and my mom was raising a single mom, and she just really didn't have time to take us. She worked in the police department. She often worked on Sundays and holidays and so forth.
Then he met Charnel.
She sounds like my kind of people. I need to meet her.
Yeah. I'm so thankful that God led me to her and through her towards him, because it's definitely changed my life.
Thank you so much, Jamie. We just know that this podcast is helping people. And that's why I was really excited about you, because it's a different element that we haven't talked about. And you're really brave to talk about it. And if anybody wants to reach out to Kevin or I, we will put them in touch with you. And thank you for your willingness to do that.
Thanks for having me.
So that's it for today.
We are going to have a prayer time if you want to stick with us. If not, we believe in you.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories.
If you like this podcast, please rate and review, because that's how other people can find us. And we really want to spread this message.
Father, I just thank you for all your blessings, especially for your acceptance of our failures and your acceptance of our weaknesses, and the fact that you want to heal us when we're weak, when we're failing. You want us to call out to you and call out for your help, that in our weakness you will be strong to guide us. Lord, I just pray that you would be with Jamie through this process and help her to be your light to those that need to know that you can heal them, that you can be there for them, that you want to be there for them, Lord. And I just pray that you would continue to guide Jamie in what she needs to do, and also the people that she needs to meet, like Lori, to help them and to help them come to you. And I just pray that if anyone's listening to this, that they would be inspired to overcome their shame, overcome whatever is holding them back from talking about, and give them the people in their life that they can trust and feel comfortable talking about with, and that they would feel emboldened to share their secrets and overcome their secrets, Lord. And I just pray that you would continue to heal Jamie and continue to guide her. Just pray that she would become a leader and just a strong warrior with your armor at her side, just to embolden her to fight back and to lead others in this battle, Lord. I just am thankful that she is understanding that the battle isn't against people, but against enemy who is trying to tear us down. And I'm glad that she's fierce in understanding that, Lord. And I just pray that you would continue to guide her in her recovery. In your name I pray.
Father, I'm just so grateful for Jamie sharing her words, telling her story. And Lord, and thank you that we crossed paths. And I say all the time about that day she walked in with her mohawk, and I was so glad that she's in my life. Father, I thank you for good friends. And Lord, I just thank you so much for her willingness to share. And I thank you for the people that are hearing this and needing to hear it, whether they know someone, whether it's them. And that, Lord, it is a process, and that it doesn't mean that we're useless until we deal with it, but Lord, it's all part of who we are. And that, Lord, the biggest part is that we start to recognize it and speak the words, and that there is such freedom that comes. And I'm just so grateful that you are a good God. And like Jamie said, the God she grew up with wasn't the God she knows now. And often we have to walk away from our childhood, God. And I thank you that she was able to recognize that, Lord. I thank you so much for her boys. I pray that you will bless them. I thank you for her business and her last day of work, that you will just bless her and open doors for her she never expected. Thank you so much that you're a loving God, and in your son's holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Man.